Hello, people. This is Mark and Lara from Kharischangeworks, guys. I hope you are well. Now, I want to address something, and me and Lara is going to discuss it a little bit. And it's something that I've noticed with someone that's pretty dear to me. And it is this whole thing about listening to music, not only what appears to be 24 hours a day, that in its own right is pretty disturbing. But more so that this person will listen to one song for hours and days on a loop. I spoke to them fairly recently, and a comment was made which basically sparked the discussion that Lara and I are going to have now, where one song of 1 minute and 36 seconds has been on a loop for 4 entire days. It doesn't take much to work out that that is a whopping amount of times listening to one song. Thousands of times, I would suggest that this thing has been heard. So let's have a chat, Lara, and see where we go with this particular one, because as you know, this is going to be a off-the-cuff chat. Guys, we've
definitely.
So this is going to be a, dare I say, a bespoke chat, or a anti-bespoke chat. So, Lara, okay, what's your thoughts on this particular issue?
Okay, first of all, I'm ADHD, so are my kids. So we always have some kind of noise on, whether it's the TV or the music, whatever. Something's on all the time, even when you go to sleep, okay? But I would say listening to one song on a loop for that amount of time is seriously obsessive. I've also got teenagers and things, as you know, and I actually mentioned it to my daughter today, and she said, no, Mom, I listened to it a couple of times, and I'm sick of it. I'll change a song, I'll eventually come back to it. But that is an obsession, and to me, that's not good, because we all know that the tongue kills or the tongue gives life. And if you're listening to something that is really dark and really, what is the word? Let's use the word violent very loosely, yeah, but if it's very aggressive and stuff like that, and you're listening to that 24/7, that is going to filtrate into your belief system. It's going to go into your brain, and it's going to come out like you've done the toothpaste tube law. What comes in under pressure comes out. And to me, you're filling your brain with all this garbage, and it's going to come out eventually, and it almost molds who you are, because you're hearing this all the time, and you start believing that nonsense. It becomes a part of you, and that's not good.
I totally agree. Now, I tried that once, maybe about 6-9 months ago, where I tried to listen to one song for a little while, and after about 3 goes of it, I got sick and tired of it. In fact, I'll go as far as to say that I don't really listen to the radio, because I think there's an agenda behind all means of media. However, when you are on a long trip and you're all by yourself, it is nice to have some kind of noise to hear what's going on in the local area, or what's snippets of the news, albeit that I've got a version to the news as well. And there's been 2 radio stations locally, one that I listened to for absolutely years and years and years and years ago. And then all of a sudden, what happened was they started to play, let's pretend a new song comes out, they would play it 3 or 4 times in that program's 2 or 3 or 4 hours slot. But they would do it on every single program. So you might hear this one song 10, 12, 15, 20 times in a day. And I got to the point where I said, you know what, I am absolutely sick and tired of listening to the same song at every program slot, even if it's twice. It started to agitate my spirit a little bit. So much so that I actually said goodbye to the radio station. It irritated me that much. Then I went to I wouldn't say the competition, but I went to a alternative local radio station. And as it happened, all the people from radio station 1 moved to radio station 2. So it was as if I was listening to the same people, but just on a different frequency. In a way, that was quite nice because its voices I'm familiar with. And for about a year or so, it wasn't too bad. And then I started noticing that they were playing the same songs over and over again. So guess what? I said goodbye to that radio station. Since then, I've been looking for alternative radio stations. I've gone through in my car, I've got the old AM, FM, and the DAB. I don't know if you guys have got DAB.
No, we don't.
Digital radio, right? Digital audio broadcasting or something like that. I don't know what it stands for, but it's basically your Google Siri nonsense, what you get, Alexa type of nonsense, but it's on the radio, something similar to that. And it's a better quality sound. And you can get it pretty much everywhere. So here I am, I'm listening to this and I'm listening to that, and I'm going, oh man, this is terrible. So I thought, I know, I'm going to go to the decade where the best music was made. Okay.
Okay.
So I found the 70s. Guess what?
What?
It wasn't long before I said goodbye. Let's go to the 80s, because in the 80s, you had amazing music.
I agree.
Right? Guess what? About 3 or 4 weeks later, I went, goodbye 80s. Then I thought, right, I know. I was working at a place that was a little bit manic, as you are aware. So I thought, I know exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to find the classical radio station. What a mistake. What a mistake. I listened to it for about 2 days and I felt like I was going to go mad. I had to say goodbye to the classical radio station very, very quickly. And in spite of it being nice, classical, relaxing music, it drove me totally insane. And it must have been about 5 or 6 weeks where I would listen to a radio station for a day or two, and swap and swap and swap and swap and swap and swap. And now I think I'm on a radio station that kind of sort of works. So what am I saying? What are we talking about here? It is music being either an agitation, or you can get music that is really, really good. But if you listen to it over and over again, as you mentioned earlier, for normal people, it would drive you batty.
True.
Because it's like that broken record thing, that repetitiveness. Now, this particular individual thrives on listening to one song over and over and over and over again. Now, here's the thing. Let's talk about this from another point of view. You and I, we both know, because we've got similar spiritual perspectives. And we both know that music can do one or two things. It is a medium to convey a message. It doesn't matter what anybody says. If you listen to the lyrics, it is either uplifting or it's not.
Correct. Absolutely correct.
Into a very broad category. It is positive and negative, uplifting or not. It's going to be good for you or it's not.
Correct.
The music that this particular individual is listening to, I find quite interesting. And I'll explain. Maybe you have an opinion on this. I don't know yet. It is a positive message. However, when you read the lyrics, or when you listen to the lyrics, if you can hear the lyrics, of course, they are using negative words, such as hate, murder, suicide, drugs, in a way that actually produces a positive sentence. Okay. Very bizarre. And when I look at the album covers, dare I say it's demonic. Now here we go. You and I have had a bit of a chat about this, not for YouTube purposes, but in our private lives.
Yes.
In today's society, how many people are confused? We think about politically. People are confused because the political bias is very similar, but they just come from different angles.
Correct.
People don't know which way to go. A bigger issue is lifestyle choices. The people that are either incredibly skinny and thin because they are borderline anorexia, or they are super obese. There's very few people who are happy with the in between. A bigger issue still is, dare I say, work ethic. You'll get some people that are overworkers.
Yes.
And then you, of course, you get a lot of people that couldn't care less.
Yep, that's right.
The biggest issue that I see currently, particularly in young people, is sexual orientation. There's gender identification stuff. Now, I'm not the brightest light bulb in the pack, but I've come to realize the messages that are coming through media, social media, and particularly the music industry, is one where there is a massive agenda that's being pushed. All you've got to do is turn on the tally, and you will see messages that are subliminal, which of course you and I, we both know that subliminal messages are incredibly effective.
Yes.
And these subliminal messages are coming through music, media, and dare I say, general society, from these peer groups that are saying, you don't have to choose what gender you want to be. You don't have to choose what hair color you want to be. Go with what feels comfortable. You and I, we both know that when you're 7, or by the time that you reach 7, your programming has taken place. Now,
Right.
I agree with that. But I will also say that at that particular stage in your life, you've only laid a very good foundation for the building that you're going to build on top of it.
Correct. I agree.
Now, here's the thing that I found: music, social media, the news, all this kind of stuff is, in spite of having a strong, solid foundation in terms of your upbringing up until that year 7 mark, so many, particularly young people, because of their lack of life experience, the ease of being influenced, the fact that they are still being shaped in terms of who they think they are, the direction in which they want to go in life, the fact that they think quantity is more important than quality in terms of friends and this kind of stuff. There's this, at least from my observational point of view, there's this drive in young people in particular that says, I got to do something in order to be accepted. And because the music industry understands this, in fact, I would go as far as to say that the music industry promotes it.
Yes.
They are striking while the iron is hot and is misshaping, bending tomorrow's adult group, bending them out of shape. So that when these young people, 7, 8, 9, 10, 13, 15, 18, because they're so bent out of shape, because of all the different pressures that are being put upon them, whether it be themselves, the parents, peer groups, school, college, and universities, I think a lot of that plays second fiddle to social media and other means of media that children and kids are listening to constantly. When you sit and look at the lyrics and the messages that are in these particular songs. And it makes me wonder, or it doesn't make me wonder, I suppose that's more accurate, why the world is in such a mess. Because the world is in a mess. So the people who are trying to coach these young folks, who in my eyes are probably the most precious groups of people out there, because they are tomorrow's leaders, they are tomorrow's whatever. They are being bent out of shape whilst they are still flexible and moldable. For you and me as adults and millions of others, we're looking at these kids and we're going, you've got no future. Or what future are you generating for yourself?
Correct.
So for the gigo, garbage in, garbage out, that is constantly being filtered in through the 5 senses, and this one all the time.
Right.
We should think about this. I think young people have become prisoners to the mobile phone. They've become prisoners to the likes of Twitter, TikTok, Facebook, and all the other platforms that are out there. They become prisoners to the music industry because it is so incredible, where you can say anything you like, look like whatever you wish you would like to look like. Geez, that's a bit of a tongue twister. And yet, the more bizarre and outrageous and crazy and stupid you look, the more young people think that you're cool and okay. And yet you look stupid, you're outrageous, and you look completely silly. But for these people who are still blind, because they haven't developed fully yet, say, they must be okay because they are adults. And it's just taking these children on a path that is leading to destruction, not only for themselves, but their future. Which means when the next generation after them comes about, they've got less hope than the children that are around today. And when we think about the third generation down, well, I don't think they have a remote chance in hell, because they would have been bent out of shape by so much. Like I've said to you before, you can't teach someone something that you don't know.
Correct.
And the children, young people today are being bent out of shape. I think about when you and I were young. We were also bent out of shape. Maybe by 2 or 3 degrees, 10 degrees.
Yeah.
Today's children are bent out of shape by 70, 80 degrees. Because there's only 10 degrees to go. But that's coming in the next generation. Where that talk is being twisted. The music's becoming more bizarre. The movies are becoming a little bit more revealing as to where the world is going. And yet, that filter for most people that says that's good, that's bad, that's acceptable, and that's not, the gaps are becoming bigger and bigger so that more rubbish can come in. And then we wonder why the world is in such a mess.
That's exactly what I was going to say. I was going to say today, okay, it comes down to the universal question: who decides what's right and what's wrong? But that's beside the point. That's for another day. But when our generation, when we grew up, there was good family morals. There was, the family units were still in place. Your society as a whole tended to still function productively and effortlessly. And then came the generation where no, they were wrong, and there had to be more liberties and all this kind of nonsense. And then social media started, and everybody had their own opinion, and you have to be tolerant of one another. And now what was classed as good or bad, fundamentally like the family unit, back then was good. Now all of a sudden everything is bad that was good, and what was bad is good. You know, before our generation, having an illegitimate child was a major scandal. Okay. And then it became accepted in society, and it's kind of what happened now. Things that were once frowned upon has become accepted in society. Society is rotten to the core, and the stuff that I quite honestly wouldn't want to be a teenager in this world. To me, it's not a place I want. There's no freedom. There's no, you know, they're living with masks and in lockdown and COVID alone, let alone all the other pressures. And 30 years ago, we didn't have that. We could still go in the street with our bicycles and walk in the street. You can still do that in England, in South Africa, but no ways. But it just shows you how the world has changed. And I think even their parents need to have a look at their kids and go, okay, they're not the same. We need to be, we need to listen to them more, because I think if we listen to our kids more, they wouldn't be looking for answers out there where they shouldn't be looking. I think parents are so busy trying to sort out the economics of the family and providing and that kind of stuff that they've lost sight of what is important. And that is why these kids are doing what they're doing, because who else is going to listen to them? If they're the social outcasts, as most kids are these days, and it's acceptable to be a social outcast, it's great to have all this weird and wonderful music going on in your head, because then you're somebody. And that's not necessarily the case.
Mhm.
It's this fictitious world that, we were saying about it with social media. It's the same thing. It's fictitious bubble that they're going to that is not giving them the right input they need to build a suitable and sustainable future.
Correct. Now, we mentioned GIGO earlier, garbage in, garbage out.
Mm-hmm.
Here's my concern. Now, you're right. I made that video on the toothpaste tube law, which, of course, one of the ministers at the church that you and I both went to,
Mm-hmm.
the preacher spoke fantastically about it. When you are listening to this one song, or maybe 2, 10, even 5 songs on a loop, what's your opinion of that in terms of how it starts to affect us with the garbage in, garbage out principle?
Well, while you were talking, I was just reminded of that. I think it was a Chinese scientist years and years and years, or Japanese scientist, that did this experiment with rice. And he put rice in water, and the one was cooked, both cooked, and the one he spoke to loving and stuff, and the other one pure hatred and venom. And the one rocked it and the one didn't. And I think that is pretty much what happens with the songs, because the more you listen to this stuff, whether it's a positive or negative message, it's going to influence who you are, because it is going into your subconscious. And we all know that your subconscious is more powerful than your conscious mind. And that is what builds your belief system. That is what comes out when you're under pressure, because you don't think about it. And I think that is the scary part, is that if they're listening to very dark stuff, they are exposing themselves and opening up stuff for a lot of garbage.
Mm-hmm.
And stuff that they shouldn't be, that they don't necessarily understand, and they're getting baited and hooked into something they have no idea about.
Yes. While you talked about the rice experiment, it reminded me of people did that with flowers and even water. And with the flowers, they put it in different greenhouses, and they played classical music in one, pop music in another, heavy metal in another, and another music genre in a fourth. And they found out that one group of plants flourished because the music was positive and relaxing and uplifting. But the songs that were heavy metal with a destructive message, those flowers withered away pretty quick. They went further to do a similar one where they got a botanist, or whatever it's called, to go and plant.
Botanist.
That's the one.
Botanist.
Yeah, it's it doesn't work so well. They planted 2 flowers of the same sort in 2 greenhouses next door to each other. And the instruction was, tend to them exactly the same. There should be no difference whatsoever, except this. You just speak out to the one, you are beautiful, you are looking so good. You are going to be amazing when you grow. People are going to love you. And to the other one, you just say, you are horrible. What on earth do you think you're doing? You are just a disaster. You're a failure.
Mm.
And they did that every single day for a number of weeks. And likewise, one flourished and the other one didn't.
Mm-hmm.
Because, you know as well as I do, everything is frequency.
Correct.
When you speak, the waves go out. And you can measure and you can see it.
Mm-hmm.
If this is a plant, a grain of rice, water, when it freezes, when it's been spoken to in a positive way or listening to positive messages, the ice crystals that form in the ice are beautiful. But yet when they are exposed to something negative, the ice crystals end up looking horrible.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if we think about this, that something that can't even speak, it can't react in the way that you and I can react as humans.
Yes.
But yet what we say verbally has this effect on something that is non-human.
Yeah.
How much more powerful will it be when we start speaking out positive stuff to people?
Mm-hmm.
Because we made up mostly of water. Maybe there'll be less angry people, less bitter people, when we start speaking in a positive manner towards mankind.
Yes.
So when you listen to one song that's got a positive message with negative words, it's a mix match. It's not the same. And I think that helps to keep children confused. Can't make up a mind because we are listening to a song with two different agendas.
Mm.
And when you see a band whose image is demonic, but sends out a positive message with negative words, it's all the atmosphere absorbs all of this.
Mm.
And when we see our young people confused, as adults, we shouldn't go, why? We should say, why?
Correct.
Point the fingers to ourselves and say, why haven't you done something about it?
Exactly.
Why have you allowed
Absolutely.
that to be done?
Yes.
X, Y, Z.
Mm-hmm.
And not too many people like that level of responsibility because it's a tough one to deal with. That pill is very bitter to swallow. And folks, we have to be very careful with what we listen to, what we look at, where we go with our feet, and what we do with our hands. Because it's all absorbed. I remind you of the video where Lara and I speak about the two secretaries. What you sow is what you reap. What goes around comes around. And when it comes down to the music that we listen to, the videos that we watch, and stuff like this, it is stuff that we are allowed to be sown in our lives. We become the ground. And if we start listening to it over and over again, it also becomes the water. It becomes that nutrition to let that seed grow.
Correct.
And when we grow, we let this thing grow in us. And when it's time for harvest, and it's not quite the fruit that we wanted, we can't blame the soil. We can't blame this. We can't blame nothing. In this instance, we have to blame ourselves for being a little bit dim.
Mm.
We need to be wise in terms of we choose what we listen to. We choose our social circles. We choose whether we accept or reject something. Someone told me today, and I'll give you the direct quote, regardless of what they say about you, I think that you're a good man. And I replied back to this particular individual, you are right, I am. And if anybody says anything negative about me, it speaks more about them than it does of me.
Correct.
And he just looked at me as to say, wow, where the heck did that come from? Here's the thing. I know who I am. I found myself. I know what I'm about. I know where I'm heading. I know what motivates me. I did this all in the process of when I was healing from the narc abuse. And if anybody says anything negative about me, I've now come to the realization it's not about me. It's about them. But I choose whether I accept that. As someone once told me, it is not the name that they call you. It is the name that you respond to that really matters.
Correct.
And in this instance, my friend, I want to say to you, the music that you listen to, the videos that you watch, the movies that you go to, the people who you invite and allow to influence you in your social circles speaks more about you than it does of them. Because ultimately, what goes around comes around. And if you are allowing negative things to come into your life, there is no way on God's green earth that you can expect a positive outcome based on negative input. It can't work. Now, I mentioned GIGO, garbage in, garbage out. It's a computer term. But let's look at this slightly differently now. If GIGO stands for garbage in, garbage out, guess what? It can also stand for good in, good out.
Correct.
It doesn't matter which way you look at GIGO. Point here is simply this. Whatever you put into your life, toothpaste tube law, when squeezed, whatever was put in will come out. And what you listen to, what you look at, the people who you hang around with is putting things in. So when you're under pressure, that's going to come out. Because what you sow, you will reap.
Correct.
And music and movies are two of the main means to get either a positive or a negative message infiltrated into the atmosphere very, very quickly and very, very effectively. I remind you in the 60s and the 70s, for those of us who are old enough to remember, there was this thing called backward masking, where they would play a song in reverse whilst playing it forward. It was a double recording. And they would play music with an incredibly negative message that was subliminally interwoven into the song we actually hear.
Yeah.
So many people's lives were messed up as a result of that. Suicides, drug overdoses, divorces, all manner of things because of the subliminal effect in music. And when you listen carefully, you will note sometimes that there are some tones that doesn't seem right. And when that happens, when I hear it, I turn the radio off. Because I don't want that rubbish in my life. I've had enough of it. So be wise and get that filter we spoke about earlier. Get that filter where the gaps are so big. We need to shrink it down so we can filter more effectively. That what we want versus that what we don't want in our lives.
Correct.
That's what this particular video is all about. Be careful. Be careful. And I would also say, be careful with that what you say. Because once you say it, you hear it yourself. And you could be your own worst enemy through the nonsense and the negative stuff that we speak. And then we wonder why nothing works out.
Correct.
That's all we want to say on this particular video.
Absolutely.
Be very, very careful. I don't know if you've got any closing thoughts from your side, Lara. No?
No, just, guys, the usual admin, like, share, subscribe, hit the notification bell so you get all our notifications, and we'll chat to you soon.
Thank you.